Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing something really interesting. We've got this first-hand account from way back in the mid-1990s.
Yeah, it's from a blog, muckypaws.com.
Right. And it's like stepping into a time machine, isn't it? Gives us this real street-level view of the early internet.
Definitely. And, for our listeners who want to get up to speed quickly but also thoroughly, this is gold. It's not some dry report.
No, it's someone actually living through it, navigating this brand new online world, and bam, running straight into credit card fraud.
Which nobody really knew how to handle back then.
Exactly. So our mission here is to unpack this story. We want to pull out what the internet really felt like then, how people first reacted to online crime, and how it kind of foreshadowed the whole cybersecurity landscape we have now.
Okay, so let's dive in. The blog post really brings that early internet vibe to life, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, mid-90s. You can almost hear the dial-up modem screeching.
Haha, right. And Windows PCs just starting to appear in homes. It was all so new.
People were literally asking, what's this interweb malarkey? According to the author. It just shows how novel and, frankly, weird it all seemed.
And think about online banking or shopping. Total experiments back then. Banks were super hesitant.
Yeah, the author talks about just how chaotic it felt. Pop-up ads flashing everywhere.
Oh, God. The pop-ups.
You'd find adult content right next to, legit information. He mentioned searching Yahoo for The Simpsons and ending up in some very strange places.
Yeah, it was unfiltered. But crucially, amidst this chaos, you had the first hints of e-commerce. Online payments were starting.
And with that, the first hints of problems. The author actually remembers seeing an ad promising protection if your card got used fraudulently online.
So people were already thinking about security or the lack of it, even then.
But it was also different in what wasn't there. No Amazon, no big platforms dominating everything.
Right. It was more about stumbling upon things. Like, the author found the entire script for Monty Python's Life of Brian just out there.
Wow. Just randomly online.
Yeah. Less commerce, more exploration maybe, in this kind of messy, unpredictable space.
Okay, so then things get personal for the author. He spots these charges on his credit card statement.
Charges he definitely didn't make.
From a website called Amateur Pie, which sounds, like what you expect.
Right. And interestingly, he notes that statements back then often had more detail than now. Actual web addresses, phone numbers sometimes.
Which gave him a starting point, at least. But then he calls the credit card company.
And their response is just classic. So dismissive.
They actually asked him, "Wife got you, sir." Embarrassed, are we?
Unbelievable. It just shows a complete lack of understanding, maybe even a bit of judgment about online stuff back then.
And their solution was just mailing out a paper dispute form.
That was it.
Yeah, very reactive. Like, something happened, fill this out. No real sense of urgency or investigation.
Which is why the author decided, okay, forget this, I'm going to figure it out myself.
And this is where the cyber sleuthing part really begins. Proper DIY detective work. Totally DIY. He starts tracing the transaction.
Yeah.
From the website.
Amateur Pie.
To the payment gateway. And they were actually helpful, surprisingly.
Yeah, unlike the car company. Then onto the processor, the platform it was hosted on, and eventually...
He gets an IP address.
And think about the tools. Netscape Navigator.
Wow, Netscape.
A super slow 14.4K modem probably took ages. And basic DOS tools.
Like ping and traceroute. Stuff you'd use for network troubleshooting.
Exactly. Not fancy forensic software, just resourcefulness.
And through this, he finds an email address linked to the activity. An AOL address.
Which, again, talk about a snapshot of the time. AOL was everywhere. Those free CDs and cereal boxes, magazines.
Oh, yeah. Inescapable was the way most people got online.
But even getting the AOL address wasn't the end goal. He tries to get the user's details from AOL support.
And hits a wall, right? Privacy policies.
Yeah, which is kind of ironic given how little privacy or security seemed to exist elsewhere online then. But AOL wouldn't give out user info.
Still, he felt like he'd achieved something, just tracing it that far. Getting the IP, the AOL address, even without a name.
Yeah, sense of accomplishment. But then comes the letdown from the system again.
Right, the credit card company. They look at his investigation. They see the 200 pounds fraud.
Which wasn't peanuts back then either.
No.
No.
But the company decides it's not worth pursuing officially.
Because it was below their 200-pound threshold for investigation, they figured it would cost more to investigate than they'd lost.
Which you can imagine the author's frustration.
Yeah.
It basically says, hey, criminals, Just keep your fraud under 200 pounds per card, and you're probably fine.
Exactly. It highlights this massive gap. You have this new type of crime happening in this new digital space. And the old systems, the financial rules, the legal frameworks, they just weren't equipped to deal with it effectively. A total disconnect.
Okay, so frustrated with the financial system, the author thinks, right, I'll try the police.
And this leads to maybe the best part of the story.
Bob has Hotmail.
Haha, yes. He calls the local police station, explains the situation, online fraud, IP addresses.
And the officer's just completely baffled. Doesn't understand a word of it, but said...
Well, we have a guy, Bob. He has something called Hotmail.
Amazing. Bob becomes a designated internet expert purely by virtue of having a Hotmail account.
And Bob sounds like a decent guy. The author describes him as kind, patient, honest about his limited knowledge. He's just the one person there who'd touch this internet thing.
So Bob listens, and he actually offers a really interesting perspective on how the card details might have been obtained.
Yeah, not necessarily sophisticated hacking. Bob suggests dumpster diving.
Right, just going through bins.
Yeah.
Because back then, unbelievably, discarded receipts often had the full credit card number and expiry date printed on them.
Crazy to think about now.
So Bob's point was, you didn't need to be a hacker. You just needed, like, rubber gloves and a flashlight.
It's such a great reminder that even early cybercrime wasn't always high-tech. Sometimes it was very, very physical and low-tech at the point of compromise.
So does the author ever find out if this dumpster diving fraudster got caught?
No, it seems like it just faded away. We never heard anything more. But the whole experience left a huge impression.
Yeah, the big takeaway for him was seeing how crime itself was changing.
Exactly. Moving away from, the stereotypical bank robber in a balaclava.
To these sort of invisible crimes committed by quiet figures in dimly lit rooms, as he puts it.
And that crucial realization, everything leaves a trace, even online, if you know how to look.
This whole saga was basically his introduction to the concept of e-crime and seeing its potential to become, well, industrialized.
Which, looking back from today, is exactly what happened, unfortunately.
So let's wrap this up. What are the key things for our listener to take away from this trip back to the Mucky Paws blog?
Well, first, just the stark contrast, right? The early internet as this kind of wild, unregulated frontier compared to today. Still messy now, but much more structured.
Definitely. And the initial fumbling, the struggle that institutions, banks, police had in just understanding online crime, let alone fighting it?
Yeah, the systems weren't ready. And also that surprising low-tech element like the dumpster diving. It wasn't all about code back then.
Absolutely. So hopefully this deep dive gives you, our listener, that quick but comprehensive insight we talked about. It's some really valuable historical context for understanding how we got to where we are with cybersecurity.
And maybe it leaves you with a thought to chew on. Consider your own digital footprint now compared to then. It's massive, right?
Oh, yeah. Mine certainly is.
So with that huge footprint and threats getting more sophisticated all the time, what might the next big shift in digital crime look like? Where does it go from here?
That's definitely something to think about. A bit worrying, maybe.
Potentially, but worth considering.